Our topic this episode is coffee, and we're going to explore such things as the health benefits of coffee, when the best time to drink coffee is, and why coffee can very quickly make you need a shit.
So let's begin by breaking down a short history of coffee. The dominant species of coffee plant is Coffea arabica. These plants can range from small shrubs to trees more than 9 meters tall. The beans, which coffee is made from, are actually the seeds inside berries grown from coffee plants and are known as coffee cherries. People have been drinking coffee for centuries, and whilst we can't be completely sure where it stemmed from, Ethiopia is the most likely candidate. In fact, there's a famous story of how coffee beans were first found by a man named Katy, an Ethiopian goat herder in 800 AD. Whilst this is a popular story, a story is likely all it is. Whilst the coffee beans almost certainly originated from Ethiopia, the place coffee was likely first being consumed as a beverage was in Yemen in the 15th century, after being exported there from Ethiopia. By the 16th century, coffee was being consumed in Persia, Egypt, Syria, and Turkey. The first coffee house was actually opened in Constantinople, now modern-day Istanbul. European travellers who visited countries serving coffee inevitably developed a taste for the bitter substance, with its profound effects on alertness, and by 1651, a coffee house in Oxford in the United Kingdom opened its doors. Word also reached people in the Americas, and in 1607, Captain John Smith introduced coffee to people in Jamestown. However, tea was still largely preferred. That was until tea was viewed as unpatriotic, due to the rebellion against Great Britain, and all of the tea was discarded into the ocean. By the 18th century, Latin American countries were some of the world's most prolific coffee producers, and today Brazil is the world's biggest producer of coffee.
Typically, coffee is consumed to give ourselves a boost in the mornings, but most of us have been there, drinking the stimulant closer to our bedtime when we shouldn't have done, and then lying in bed condemning the effects of wakefulness, but on the other hand also really looking forwards to our morning cup of joe to help us feel less tired, which we inevitably will be due to the fucking coffee in the first place. So with that in mind, how exactly does coffee affect our sleep, and what is the latest time in the day that you should drink coffee to avoid sleep deprivation? Caffeine, the chemical in coffee which promotes alertness, blocks the effects of adenosine, a naturally occurring chemical that promotes our sleep drive. It can even increase levels of anxiety. Basically, it does just about everything it can to stop us going to sleep. So, what's the tea on coffee? We drink coffee to keep us alert and awake, so it might seem strange that it's associated with feeling more tired throughout the day. According to a review of the links between caffeine consumption and sleep quality, caffeine typically prolonged sleep latency, reduced total sleep time and sleep efficiency, and worsened perceived sleep quality. Now, in a way, this isn't surprising, right? You have a bad night's sleep, so you drink more coffee, of course. There's a correlation between the two, but there's good evidence that this relationship goes both ways, with caffeine abstinence for even just a single day resulting in sleep of significantly better quality and duration and reduced sleep latency. In other words, it's not just that you're increasing your caffeine intake because you're tired. You're also tired because you're increasing your caffeine intake. The question of precisely when to bin the beans each day is too individual to issue a blanket statement. People with 2 copies of a particular variant of the CYP1A2 gene, also known as the coffee gene, are able to metabolize caffeine faster than most of us, who only have 1. Someone who metabolizes caffeine slowly, on the other hand, should probably avoid evening caffeine if they want a good night's rest. Why? Well, it can take 2 to 10 hours for just half of caffeine's effects to wear off. This half-life, as it's known, varies from person to person. So say you have a pretty normal metabolism for caffeine, around a 6-hour half-life. That nice cup of coffee on the way back from work at 6 p.m, half of its caffeine content is still in our system at midnight. A quarter is still there at 6 a.m. the next morning. If you're sensitive to caffeine, that's going to have a big effect on your sleep. And the real kicker? You likely won't even realize just how big an effect it is until it's too late. Waiting a while before you make your morning cup of coffee can also have some benefits. One of the big factors here is hydration. Caffeine does have a diuretic effect, meaning you're going to need to pee more. The water in coffee does go towards your daily fluid intake, so it's not necessarily true to say that caffeine is dehydrating, particularly in people who are very used to drinking it. However, plain old water is inarguably the best way of staying hydrated.
There's just nothing like a cup of a hot brown water to start your day. For some it's the taste, while others seek the energy boost. Yet some will go down fighting, claiming tea is not only the more delicious drink, but is also the strongest stimulant. Tea is the warming beverage you get from pouring boiling water over fresh or dry leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant. There are over 1,000 types of tea, but they mostly fall into the categories of green, black, white, and oolong. A 2008 study found that caffeine content across the varieties of commercial tea ranged from 14 to 61 milligrams per serving. There was no particular association between strength and tea type, but steeping time did have a big influence on caffeine concentration. On the other hand, the caffeine content of coffee varies depending on the size and type of your drink. If you're knocking back double espressos, you could be looking at 60 to 100 milligrams of caffeine, while the average cup ranges from 65 to 120 milligrams. You may have heard that tea has more caffeine than coffee, but this is rarely the case when it comes to the actual beverages. If you look at the caffeine content of each drink's raw ingredients, then tea leaves come out on top, with a caffeine content of 3.5% compared to just 1.1 to 2.2% in coffee beans. Tea is created when particles move from the tea bags to the hot water. The end product is therefore a very diluted version of the raw products. This is why, despite being stronger than coffee beans, tea typically winds up being a comparatively less caffeinated drink. The wizardry of baristas is actually a kind of science, because they create just the right size and shape of coffee grinds so that the flow of hot water can extract the sour coffee flavor and balance it out with the bitterness of caffeine. Too fine equals a strongly caffeinated bitter drink, while too big results in a sour-tasting coffee with a weak caffeine kick. How that extraction happens is why you get different kinds, like filter versus espresso.
Coffee drinkers out there will be familiar with the phenomenon of the coffee poops, the poops you suddenly have the urge to do after drinking your morning macchiato. The phenomenon is generally accepted amongst coffee drinkers, despite not a lot in the way of scientific investigation. In a small survey, 29% of people said that coffee gave them the desire to defecate. Any liquid will help stimulate bowel movements by softening your stools. However, small studies have shown that coffee gets the bowels working, including one that placed a 6-sensor solid-state probe up to the mid-transverse colon in 12 healthy volunteers. In a study which compared coffee, decaf coffee, and meals with water, they concluded that caffeinated coffee stimulates colonic motor activity. Its magnitude is similar to a meal, but 60% stronger than water and 23% stronger than decaffeinated coffee. This suggests that caffeine may play a role in stimulating bowel movements, though there may be something else in the coffee, given that decaf had an effect stronger than water, and a later study supported this idea. Caffeine at 3.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight in 200 milliliters of water resulted in stronger anal sphincter contractions both at basal period and during voluntary squeeze. The sensory threshold was also decreased, leading to an earlier desire to defecate. Another study found an increase of the hormone gastrin, which stimulates the bowels after consumption of both regular and decaffeinated coffee. However, the exact mechanism of this remains a mystery.
Despite the downsides drinking too much coffee can have on sleep and the potential for you to urgently evacuate your bowels, there are a lot of health benefits from drinking coffee. Research suggests that around 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day can cut your risk of developing liver disease by up to an impressive 65%. And according to the paper from the Institute for Scientific Information on Coffee, regular coffee drinkers are up to 40% less likely to develop liver cancer and 25 to 70% less likely to get cirrhosis. Chronic liver disease, which covers a number of conditions including hepatitis, cirrhosis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and hepatocellular cancer, is the 5th most common cause of death in the European Union. It's not exactly clear why coffee is linked to reduced liver disease risk, but existing data shows that coffee drinkers exhibit significantly lower levels of the liver enzymes gamma-glutamyl transferase and adenine transferase than those who avoid coffee altogether.
Further studies included in a meta-analysis have explored the links between coffee consumption and hepatocellular cancer, the most common form of primary liver cancer. The analysis revealed that drinking just 1 cup of coffee a day can cut your risk of developing HCC by 20%. 2 cups can cut the chance by 35%, and 5 cups can halve the risk, although they don't really recommend actually drinking 5 cups of coffee every day. They found that decaf coffee also appeared to offer some kind of protection against the risk, although the benefit was smaller and less significant than for caffeinated coffee. Drinking coffee also appears to bring many health benefits, even if you have a history of heart problems. An American College of Cardiology meta-study found that up to 6 cups of standard-strength coffee a day did not increase the severity or rate of ventricular arrhythmias. Another study of over 228,000 people showed that coffee drinkers have a 6% reduction in the risk of atrial fibrillation, the most common heart rhythm disorder that causes the heart to beat rapidly and skip beats. A further study of over 115,000 patients showed a 13% risk decrease. Another study of 103 people recovering from heart attacks found that drinking an average of 3 coffees, or 350 milligrams, every day actually improved their heart rate. Tea will also do the job, but researchers determined that most energy drinks should really be avoided, especially if you have any pre-existing heart conditions.
Due to coffee's anti-inflammatory and also liver-friendly properties, it may also halve the risk of death for those with HIV and hepatitis C. Patients with HIV/HCV are at a higher risk of developing end-stage liver disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. A study analysed 1,028 HIV to HCV co-infected patients over a 5-year period. At the start of the study, 1 in 4 patients reported drinking at least 3 cups of coffee daily. By the end of the study, 77 deaths occurred. They found that drinking at least 3 cups of coffee daily was associated with a 50% reduction in mortality risk. That was even after taking into account health factors associated with these conditions, and other socio-behavioral factors, such as not smoking and their relationship status.
As if all that wasn't enough, coffee may also generally reduce anyone's risk of death. When researchers looked at the relationship between coffee drinking and mortality in middle-aged Mediterranean adults, they found that those who consumed at least 4 cups a day had a 64% lower risk of all-cause mortality. For each additional 2 cups a day, the risk reduced by another 22%. Gender and adherence to the Mediterranean diet had very little impact on the outcome, but it turns out that age does make a difference. The over 45s who drank an extra 2 cups of coffee per day had a 30% lower risk of mortality, while it didn't really have much of an impact on the younger participants. That's all from us today. Thank you for watching this episode of the IFLScience Show. If you'd like to see more content from us, please hit that subscribe button and consider giving this video the old thumbs up.